Greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome to the Way of the Showman, where we view the world through the lens of showmanship. I am Captain Frodo, and I will be your gracious host and guide along this fifth leg of the journey along the Way of the Showman, where we attempt to give you the ability to create in your mind this lens that I have talked about in the beginning of these episodes from the very beginning. The lens of showmanship. What is it? Well, in today's episode we're going to go further on that, but before we do so, I'll just say it's very good to have you back, and as it's indicated already, this journey has been one long journey. It started in episode 24, and each episode or each leg of this journey builds on the episodes before, so the concepts that I've talked about there, I won't necessarily explain everything again. And if you feel lost in this episode, then go back and take the whole trip. Go back to episode 24, and then I'll wait for you here. For the rest of you, it's great to have you back. Let's get on our way. We start, as always, with a little recap of what we talked about last time. We visited the frontier of authenticity, and I read a little thing that said, the crowd sees the exoteric. The crowd sees the exoteric and feels the esoteric. These align into authenticity. So that was an aphoristic expression of it, meaning the crowd sees the show, but they feel the man, exoteric then being a kind of synonym for the show, because we have looked at showman as one pointing towards the external, the exoteric, and man as pointing towards the esoteric. And in the way that these align into authenticity, that was what we talked about last time, and I called that the frontier of authenticity. And actually, this reminded me of a poem. And this poem is written by David White, a person, a poet and writer that I very much enjoy, and I found him after I had been thinking about these things. Of course, as we heard in the last episode, some of these ideas have been boiling around for the last decade, but when I found the poetry and as a speaker as well, David White is just quite amazing. And he's got this poem called Just Beyond Yourself. Just beyond yourself. It's where you need to be. Just beyond yourself is where you need to be. Half a step into self-forgetting, and the rest restored by what you'll meet. Just beyond yourself, it's where you need to be. Half a step into self-forgetting, and the rest restored by what you'll meet. And then the poem goes on, and this is the bit where it really comes together with this idea that we just talked about the frontier of authenticity. As the poem goes, there is a road always beckoning. There's a road always beckoning, and when you see the two sides of it closing together at that far horizon and deep in your heart at exactly the same time, that's how you know it's the road you have to follow. When you see the two sides of the road closing together at that far horizon and deep in the foundations of your own heart at exactly the same time, that's how you know it's the road you have to follow. That's how you know it's where you have to go. That's how you know you have to go. That's how you know. Just beyond yourself, it's where you need to be. To me, that poem, when I then discovered that poem, I thought, this is just speaking directly to me, as if it was made specifically for me. He uses the language of the road and the way, which is what we talk about here. And it talks about this thing of aligning to authenticity where the outer and the inner comes together. The way he talks about the horizon, it closes together at that far horizon and deep in the heart at exactly the same time. That's how you know it's the road you have to follow. And that road that he talks about there, that is, to me, synonymous with the way, our way. The way that goes between the inner and the outer, the way that goes between us and the audience, as we shall look at later. This is the road you have to follow. That's how you know it's where you have to go. Beautiful poem. If you aren't already following what David Whyte is doing, I can highly recommend it. So that's maybe, we this is probably all we need to say about that. I feel the authenticity is something there when we can when there's alignment between what's going on inside us, when those ideas that I am expressing in my show, whether it is physical skills or whether it is skills, falls into another category which we talked about again, but with the emotions and the words and the meanings that I am conveying with my art, if that is truthfully felt within me and I have managed to find a good way of expressing that in the world, the audience experiences that as authenticity. That's my thesis in all of this. Then we talked about truth in skills, that when there's a certain truth in skills that can't be argued with, after you have performed a slick, cool routine or any kind of skill, balance a knife on your nose or whatever it is, after you have done that, you have bought yourself a certain rapport with the audience. Skills has its own truth, and after you have shown them the truth of something that you can do beautifully, masterfully, which is something which I think is already there, right there, just watching somebody do something masterfully, something that they know how to do, which you can just feel that it's difficult, or that it is just so novel that it had not entered your imagination in any way before, or you had never seen it. Then that creates its own truth too. Watching something novel unfold before you is arresting for the human attention. We like to see things done well, like we like to see a masterfully created knife. If somebody has made a knife, for instance, and they can show you the craftsmanship that went into it. If somebody has a beautiful piece of furniture designed, then it has its own inherent beauty and truth in it, and I think we can harness that in our performances. Then we looked at an authentic case study, just of me being able to say, follow your dreams, you can be whatever you want, which is, I argue, the worst kind of Hallmark card, get well greeting card style truth. But by combining it with a skill and a particular presentation, and that each single word of my little speech rings true with them, you get this concordance, or this resonance between my inner truth and the truth that you see in before you, and thus you experience it as authentic, and in that moment it has the ability to move you. And so yeah, that's basically where we left up last time. So let's set out on this next leg of the journey. A life and a living. And most people thrive best in a stable life situation with friends around them, and we all seek fulfillment of emotional, social, and intellectual needs in an environment where the pursuit of these goals are permitted and even encouraged. And this is true in both our lives and in our living, or whatever we do for work to make ends meet. Now, this is a very complicated way of, or dense way of saying that, we like it when we have friends around ourselves, and that they stimulate our emotional and social needs, and also that we can have some intellectual conversations and an intellectual stimulation, and in the same environment, then that's good. And that part of life is to seek out a place where the pursuit of these goals are everywhere. And I was just doing an interview today for a local TV station, and there was sort of a talk about that, of all these people who are differently. The woman who was on the show with me, this breakfast TV show, she was doing a celebration for someone's life, some man who has passed away, who came out as homosexual in the 80s in this small, what would you call it, fishing village where I grew up, industry and whatever, which must have been hard. And the host of the show, he asked, well, how is this in your industry? And of course I've been working in cabaret for a long time, so it's the gays are very powerfully represented in there. And I was kind of, I was just saying, it's quite common, but although it might be easy to be out within the cabaret world, I'm sure each one of these people came out somewhere else than in the circus or in the cabaret world, and they might have had their own very difficult times before they ended up in the place, the circus, and the place where being different is cash value, and any angle that you have, any different perspective that you have, can be utilized and highly praised and highly valuable, and unique perspectives are always welcome in this environment that we are in. So we seek those places, even if we aren't born there. We might end up there, but I think we seek this fulfillment of emotional and social and intellectual needs, and we seek those in the world, and we also seek an environment where we can find that. And that's just a statement of what is the life. It's not easy to try and pin these things down, but the man part of the word showman, if we think of the word showman as functioning as a signpost with many arrows, it points towards the more practical needs, as well as this sort of inner, more general, what we've talked about last time, the more sort of esoteric or the more soulful aspects of the human being. The man part, or the life part, points also towards the sort of practical needs, which encompasses both the straightforward needs of the body, like food and shelter, but also, as we've just talked about, the need for a satisfactory and happy life. The things pointed to by the show part of the word showman, as in the business of doing shows, can play an important part in fulfilling these needs and desires. In this way we see how these two particular expressions of showman, looking at it, how one is sort of feeding the other, or can help. The details are coming together as a whole. Because showmanship does have this direct and practical possibility of making a performer economically independent, as well as attending to our needs for meaning and value in life. Now let's take a little look at how the life aspects of the man arrow sign can be provided for by doing shows, and how that can help us becoming independent. In very rare cases, some might find their way as children, like you're born and you just know what you want to be. But most of us don't start finding ourselves until we've lived at least a couple of decades. As a part of finding ourselves, we need to become independent and be able to take care of ourselves emotionally and financially. With leaving our childhood home comes the need to find financial and emotional stability as individuals. Torn loose from the familiar, be that family or any other caregivers or system one has relied on, we become responsible for meeting our own needs. Not all situations left behind are blessed with bliss. Some families are far from the nurturing havens we see in sweet television shows. Some are more like the families in the Brothers Grimm fairy tales, where wicked stepmothers and violent fathers or what have you, leaving their children in the forest when hard times come. Anyway, some are relieved to get away from their family, and others struggle to find the motivation or desire to leave the cozy comforts of home. Either way, leaving challenges us. And before we look into the most important things in life, like laughing and eating well with good friends, and literature and ideas, which fills you with enthusiasm, self-realization through creative ventures, or enjoying some well-crafted beverages, we need to look a little bit at money, since it's not easy to be calm enough to enjoy the best things life has to offer if you are hungry and looking for a place to sleep where you won't get rained on. Even if I've had times in my youth where I was walking around at night in cities strange to me, looking for a place to sleep, it always felt like a kind of freedom. But for those who live in this situation, perhaps with a child or two to care for, this is not experienced as freedom. A moneyless Buddhist monk in a cave could be experiencing eternal bliss as a permanent resident of nirvana, but the randomly chosen homeless person sleeping under a bridge is usually pretty far from inner bliss. Money is not everything, but studies have found that happiness does increase as one's income rises, but only up until a certain point, when all one's necessities can be paid for, and there is a surplus that gives a certain experience of freedom, so you can relax. Happiness is reported as the highest. After that, we are dealing with diminishing returns, so some money is needed. The following thoughts and words are not about getting rich. This is a worthy goal for whomever this becomes the passion, but it comes with its own pitfalls. This whole introduction probably shows more about me and my relationship to money versus the creative aspects of showmanship than whether this is a true thing for everybody in show business. So, money. For the showman who makes a living from performing, doing shows quite literally provide for the man. The show provides for the man, or the human, gives us our life necessities. The living is providing for the life. I'd be lying if I claimed money is unimportant. As we have said, having enough money makes the experience of happiness more likely. Yet money is not the only point. It's important for the everyday life aspect. One does need money to live and pay the bills, and many of us have families which want shoes or toys, and who desires more than a van to sleep in. And shows can provide for this. Around the world there are countless artists working in circuses, on streets and market squares, in theaters, in cabaret venues, in nightclubs, in Las Vegas showrooms, in shopping centers, and on cruise ships. The lists of venues and avenues show folks have found to carve out a niche to making a living is practically endless. Producers, venue owners, marketing people, stagehands, riggers, front of house people, ticket sellers, to name a few. They're all involved in the enterprise of showmanship, or, as it is more commonly known, show business. For all these people, showmanship is a business. Now, money, as is pointed out in that thing only when, I can't remember, it's some sort of Native American thing that you can also find on a Hallmark thing, like a postcard, that only when the last tree has been chopped down and last fish been fished, only then will we realize that money can't be eaten. And we talked a bit about money when we talked about the social imaginary in the first season. But money is a kind of abstraction. It's a social imaginary. It's a product of our social imagination. It's a very practical way of simplifying all human interactions. It's by no means perfect, but unlike our need for breathing oxygen or need to eat and sleep, we could all, in theory, get together and decide on a different solution to serve our needs for exchanges of goods and services. When I was a street performer in the late 90s, I began thinking of money as tokens signifying an energy exchange. And after my show, people would come up and drop money into my hat. And I saw this as a kind of energy exchange. I had just given them a whole lot of good energy, and they came up and dropped tokens they themselves had gotten from their employers in exchange for the energy that they had given their employer. In this way, the audience gave me a return on my spent and positively received energy with their own energy beyond just the clapping and cheering, and now in the form of this abstract metal or paper token, which we had all imbued with a magic ability to retain this energy that we all give, our life energy, our work energy. And I say magic because in a very real sense, I think that's what it is. Money is a kind of magic trick. It's something unnatural that we humans can agree to, which makes no sense to animals. Just like we talked about shows and somebody sitting on the cans giving a little speech. To the animals, these little things are just bits of metal and paper, nothing more, nothing less. To people, these things are supremely valuable, and people can be completely hooked on these things, more so than love and food to those who are addicted to this kind of magic property of money. But what we do, what I do certainly, and from my point of view, what we do is about something more than money. The status and the glitz and the glamour that follows along with being a successful performer, and indeed also in smaller ways for quite mediocre performers. Things like fame and sex, attention, and the ability to see the world, and a lifestyle of fun and festivals are other factors which can make someone desire to be a performer. And these are, of course, deep and powerful motivators. All this, sex and attention and fame and money, riches, they're all powerful motivators. Arguably the most powerful motivators of all, but I would argue that for at least a subset of the passionate show folks out there, there is something more to why they choose this unusual way of life. Because ultimately there are easier ways to make money. Because making art and finding people that want to pay you for that art is not the easiest way to make money. The avenues for making money by doing shows are far from straightforward. There is no minimum wage for a bad artist. Maybe there is in France, but most places artists are thought of as varying kinds of parasites. That said, there is vast amounts of money to be made by doing shows. It's not a bad career choice, and it has the possibility of rewarding you financially, but for this to happen, it needs to become a lifestyle. The 9-to-5 circus performer is a rare creature indeed, or somebody that just lives in one spot and performs in one spot. Happens very few places. So making money by doing show isn't necessarily easy. Part of the reason for this is that most beginners aren't very good performers, and you only become good by doing lots of shows. This means that in the beginning the product you're peddling isn't good, and those kinds of products are hard to sell. There's often a long period in the beginning of a performer's career where money is scarce. Only those who stick with it for long enough become good enough and make enough connections to ensure a steady supply of work opportunities and income on the other side of the hump. The upside is that if you are following your passion each step along the way, whether this is paid or otherwise, it's just a step along your own way. And then you're happy along the way. I've had that feeling. Been blessed with having that feeling where whatever it was that I was doing at the time, whatever show, version of shows, freak shows or street shows or magic, or it felt like this is where it's at. I'm just so excited to get up in the morning and go down and put my suitcase in the line of other street performers and get out there and just do the show. And yeah, it's a good thing if you're following your passion each step, paid or otherwise. It's a step along your own way, even if you have to sleep in some bushes. If the pursuit of riches was my ultimate goal, would it be deemed wise to spend my time practicing magic, spend years learning juggling from a book, writing a half-hour-long poem about a clown emigrating to the New World, doing street shows without having seen a proper street show before, or my decision to dedicate myself to becoming a freak show performer? Imagine a businessman who says, "If you want to get rich, son, I would recommend going on tour in an old ambulance filled with bricks to be smashed on a hermaphrodite, with a dwarf driving the van with welded metal extensions on the pedals so his little feet can reach them. The Prince of Pain sleeping in the back of the van, and only Yum Yum the Pinhead is there to keep you sane." This businessman offering this as money-making scheme advice, I don't think that person actually exists. But this was what I did in the end of the 90s, and it should be screamingly obvious that this choice, which was one I made with my life, was about something else. The motivation for me to do this came from something inner rather than something outer. I was doing it to fulfill something which was inside me, a passion, an enthusiasm. This was the motivator, not monetary gain. If I don't remember, that first tour with this freak show, I think we got paid £40 a day on that tour. And then after those few days we'd been on tour, a month or so, then that was it. No more pay until the next time we went on tour, months later. So, lucky I had my street show. But anyway, since that tour of Europe in the ambulance in 1998, and in truth, from a few years before that, I have been living out of a suitcase. All my clothes are black, so that in the limited space available in an airplane regulation size and weight suitcase, every piece of clothing can be worn with every other one. And I've heard that Einstein had many suits in exactly the same cut and color, so he wouldn't have to spend time choosing his outfit. But then again, so does people in mental or correctional institutions. So it has its ups and its downs. But being driven by something more inner than all these things, you just take it in your stride. Because is this way of the showman, is it an occupation? Is it a job? Or is it something more? Because technically, showmanship can be an occupation, yet I don't think occupations, or like the word occupation, adequately covers the relationship passionate showfolk has to their craft. An occupation is a job. For so many people, the nature of their job is vastly different from the nature of what they do for fun and meaningful enjoyment of life. This discrepancy is part of why I don't think occupation or job cover a showman's relation to his craft. It seems to me too trivial to describe our relationship to our craft. It's occupation or job. Calling it a job or an occupation places showmanship alongside of phone sales and grocery checkouts, plumbers and office clerks. And as important as all those jobs are, a substantial portion of the people working as cashiers in supermarkets does not do so because they have a burning passion for being cogs in the grand machinery of exchanging food and goods for cash. Whilst the situation for performers and artists almost exactly mirrors this, it is inversely proportional. The number of those who aren't living and burning for being supermarket cashiers is equivalent, perhaps, to the showman who does burn for their craft. Expressed more straightforward, the majority of showfolk create and perform shows because they have a burning passion for creating art and doing shows. Their distinct passion and happy place is to express something in a performance context. So I think words like vocation or calling better describes the relationship a showman has to his craft, a performer has to her craft. To be a showman is more often than not, more of a calling than your average occupation. It's the kind of work that requires you to have a strong urge for and attraction to be able to enjoy it at all. If you don't have the passion, you'll find it tiring. And I don't know, maybe all work can have that effect, but the love that comes from the calling transforms living in a van with several other foul-smelling freaks into a glorious realization of dreams rather than a nightmare of failing to find your place in the machinery of modern life. If the craft of showmanship does not spark true enthusiasm in you, it is not the way for you. If the craft of showmanship does not spark true enthusiasm in you, it is not the way for you. And in conclusion, the reasons someone finds themselves drawn to stages, streets, and circus rings to present themselves and their material, more often than not, goes deeper than financial or ego-boosting rewards. I am here talking of an internal drive, a whisper inside you that has something to say, manifested in a deep enjoyment for practicing juggling or wire walking, or a feeling of belonging that makes show business feel like coming home. Usually, it's a bit of everything. Money, fame, a passion for practicing and creating, the kind of people you meet. That all might be what initially made you seek out the craft. But this might develop into a deep internal connection to all of it. So now we come to what I like to think of as the pull of the stage. Because the calling or inner connection is a real thing. Often you might not hear or understand exactly what the sort of inner voice whispers to you, but it manifests as a desire to practice and pursue, to express yourself, and to find a receptive audience. It might just be a faint belief that you have something to show, something to say, something to share. You might not know what you want to share, but you have discovered a place in the world, and it has deeply caught your interest. The place is unlike most other places in the universe. It's a uniquely human space, another dimension which only exists when human beings get together in a certain way, with a certain frame of mind. When a group of people gathers orderly to face in the same direction with their focal point on a space before them. That space is like a vacuum for those with a calling of the showman. A vacuum that pulls you like a black hole. You want to be in that space. You want to be the singularity at the core of that immense gravitational field holding the group of people together. You yearn to understand the laws which governs this strange space. You want to make order out of chaos. You want to create something meaningful and captivating that can transform the gathered bodies in space from a crowd to an audience, shape attention into interest. What are these strange dynamics? What is this process? These questions, unspoken or unformed perhaps, but still these questions burn at our core. This, and what have I got to offer? What lives inside me that can deserve this kind of attentional scrutiny from an audience? Have I got it in me to master this craft? To create a masterpiece that can captivate the hearts and minds of an audience? Can I learn to move them? Perhaps even expand their notions of themselves and what is possible in the world? All these things springs to mind for me when I try to tell you what the way of the showman is, springing from the very foundational grounding of the world manifesting in an internal and external experience, to the understanding that what's ultimately on show in our shows is ourselves. Then we develop a much deeper understanding of ourselves and our roles in the world than if we were just to see ourselves as mere entertainers, just entertainers, offering color and movement to give some random strangers a chance to take their mind off their dreary lives. If the way is, as We have described it here, the midway of life, as it exists between the inner and the outer, between a performer and an audience, and between our own inner reality and a reality in which we walk about and live our lives. Then we have found a frontier of authenticity running along this inner and outer reality. We have not found this frontier yet when we first meet the calling, but just knowing that there exists such a space, even as a concept, makes it possible to find it. It is not easy to find things if we don't know they might exist to be found. Knowing this, we have solidified the word showman, as a waypointer sign with many arrows. This is, perhaps you could think this is just a word game, but words are not frivolous things. The way we think and the way we talk influences our reality in very real ways. The word games of punning, or looking at older uses of words, or dividing words up in maybe unusual, unorthodox ways, very frequently strikes me as deeply resonant. The way show and man points to the inner and the outer might just be a mere curiosity, a coincidence of happenstance, but this is exactly the same argument which is used to belittle our very craft, the activity of showmanship, as mere frivolous entertainment. As we go on the continued argument in this series, that this whole argument will be that there is nothing mere about our craft. Saying that it's just entertainment will reveal itself to be an empty and meaningless way to frame it. This is the core purpose of the way of the showman, our lens that we're making here, to explore and discover the endless landscapes, inner and outer, of showmanship, to show that following this way is uniquely suited to living a fulfilled and meaningful life, providing ample stimulation and fulfillment intellectually, emotionally, and practically, as well as being a deeply rewarding way to become fully human. The way of the showman is a way of life, and a very good life indeed. And thus we come to the end of another trip along the way of the showman. It is a distinguished and delightful pleasure to be sharing this walk with you. So good. And if you have any questions in regards to any of this stuff that I'm talking about, if you have any ideas of something that you would like to share with me, then I am going to do these personal detours where we can talk about discoveries along the way, or if there's anything that this has sparked in you, or a conversation you've had that reminded you of something, then drop me an email. Send me an email at thewayoftheshowman@gmail.com, or you can contact me on Captain Frodo on Facebook, or you can contact me on Frodo Santini on my Facebook as well. And if you have enjoyed this and you'd like to picture yourself in a lovely coffee shop with lovely leather tall-backed chairs, and we've been sitting by a fire and in some fancy little coffee house, and you walked up to the counter, and as you did so you thought, I'm going to buy this fancy showman a nice cup of coffee, then there is a way for you to do it. You can do it at buymeacoffee.com/Captain Frodo, and you can give me a little sweet caffeinated, actually it's not caffeinated at all, it's just a few dollars that I can use then to buy a coffee here in Norway, or wherever I might be at the time you send me your much talked about coffee voucher gift. Anyway, I don't know if I'm going to mention that every episode, so tell your friends, in case I'm going to try and keep it a secret from now on. Anyway, it's been a pleasure sharing this trip along the way with you. And with that, that's all I have planned to say today. So all that's left to be said is take care of yourself and those you love. And I hope to see you along the way.